Prime Minister Modi lands in Washington. Grand welcome for the Prime Minister. Jam-packed day one for Prime Minister Modi in America. Crucial meet with Vice President Kamala Harris. Mega interaction with top CEOs. India Today tracks Prime Minister Modi's pivotal US tour.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's big meetings will take place right here at the White House. The bilateral meeting with President Biden is also the first in-person Quad meeting of the quadrilateral leaders.
NaMoste, America.
Hello and welcome to the special edition from Washington, D.C. It is the first day of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's historic visit to the United States of America. The aircraft Air India One touched down at St. Andrews Air Base in Maryland, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed early this morning in India, evening here in Washington, D.C. He was welcomed by senior officials of Biden administration, and India's envoy to the United States of America, Ambassador Taranjeet Singh Sandhu, was also present at the airport. The Indian diaspora gave a warm welcome to Prime Minister Modi despite rain and COVID restrictions. In today's itinerary, Prime Minister will hold all crucial bilateral talks with US Vice President Kamala Harris at 12:45 a.m. India Standard Time. But before that, Prime Minister Modi will be meeting top 5 CEOs in Washington, including Qualcomm CEO Cristiano Amon, Adobe Chairman Shantanu Narayan, First Solar CEO Mark Widmer, General Atomics CEO Vivek Lal, and Blackstone CEO Stephen Schwarzman. Prime Minister's one-on-one meeting with the CEOs is expected to begin at 7:35 p.m. and is likely to last for an hour. After that, Prime Minister will hold bilateral talks with Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison at 11 p.m.
Prime Minister's visit to United States has 6 elements, 6 broad elements. So first is, of course, the bilateral meeting with President Biden. Second is the meeting with the Vice President Kamala Harris. Third is the Quad Summit. Fourth is the interactions with Prime Ministers of Australia and Prime Minister of Japan separately. Then there is an interaction with select industry leaders. And finally, there is the UN section.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in the United States of America after 6 months of hiatus. A massive security presence outside his hotel. That's Hotel Willard, which is where he stays normally. This time around also, he's staying at this historic hotel, and there is absolute security presence and barricading of the hotel. If you see on the right and the left-hand side, there are these cement huge block barricades to ensure that no cars really pass through this entire lane, this entire road outside of Hotel Willard. There are trucks that are parked right through the lane that touches the hotel to ensure that no cars are parked and to ensure that security is absolutely 100% foolproof. On the other side as well, you can see security presence, vehicles and barricading. So no entry into or outside of Hotel Willard unless and until they're checked by security personnel. He's not the only high delegation level official or a leader who's arrived at in the United States of America. We have the Prime Minister of Australia and the Prime Minister of Japan both here in the US, and there are going to be bilateral meetings that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will hold with all his counterparts, including a bilateral meeting with President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. There's also an important engagement when it comes to the business community. He's going to meet top business honchos of the country to speak of post-COVID recovery, economic recovery when it comes to India and the United States of America, and how can the two countries move forward. Quad in-person meeting is a very important aspect of his visit. not just to see how to counter China and China's aggressive posturing in the Indo-Pacific, but also to ensure that there's resilient supply chains, and India is key to that entire global supply chain. After which he is going to address the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Video journalist Yogendra Singh in Washington DC, Geeta Mohan for India Today. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's every visit here in the United States of America has seen a lot of pomp and circumstance, with Indian community members jostling or gathering outside the hotel, particularly Hotel Willard, where he stays every time he visits the United States of America. Indian American community this time around, because of COVID, could not really come to the hotel, but yes, they were at the airport, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi was received very warmly upon his arrival. But I did speak to a few people who gathered outside the hotel just to get a glimpse of the man. Let's take a listen to what they had to say. Not many Indian community people outside the hotel like they used to be to welcome him, but some of them certainly came to see or to get a sense of what's really happening outside the hotel. Saundari, let me begin with you. How did you come here knowing that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is arriving and just to get a glimpse of the man?
Yes, kind of, yes. I'm also working with them here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you excited about the fact that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in the US?
Yes, I hope he will do something better for our country, so that's why he came here.
Yeah, he's come here. A lot of people hope he should be doing better for the country. But there are many issues, global issues, that concern India and the world. What is your take on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, and how should he engage the world?
Well, as a student, I recognize that it's a monumental time with the issues that's going around the world, especially with Afghanistan and the tremors in the Indo-Pacific. So it's a monumental time, and it's great to be here while the Prime Minister is here.
Also, the concerns that students have with regards to being able to travel to the United States of America. US is opening up a little. Is that a concern that your friends have faced in the past?
Well, it used to be a concern, but especially now after this government has come in, things have become a lot more easier. So yeah, that's something to look forward to, certainly.
You're here. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived. How excited are you? What do you think India's position when it comes to the as a global power really is? And how do you see Prime Minister Narendra Modi engage the world leaders, including Quad meeting?
I'm very happy and excited that Narendra Modi ji is in our Washington DC here, and he is such a big leader. Everybody knows around the world, and he's bringing good thing for India. And I'm pretty sure all these four countries, when they're going to sit together, definitely they're going to talk about terrorism, they're going to talk about global warming, they're going to talk about economy stuff, and making the better relationship with all the other nations.
Well, you're working with the contingent. Aap yahan pe, you're handling them. So just how is it working for the Indian contingent and for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's, official cavalcade?
Yeah, so like I said before, this is my third time, and every time it's an honor, and I look forward to this meeting especially. I mean, the changes that have taken place in Afghanistan, I'm sure it's going to be a big talk about that with President Biden. And so, yeah, it's great to, work with him.
Right. Great to work with him. A lot of Indians over here excited about Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Many of them didn't turn up over here, reach the airport, but the message is quite clear that India and the Indian Prime Minister has to put forth issues regarding regional security, especially conversations on Afghanistan and concerns with regards to terrorism. The duty journalist Yogendra Singh in Washington DC, Geeta Mohan for India Today. Now, the first ever in-person Quad Summit is to take place on Friday, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be a participant. Ahead of the crucial Quad Summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also going to hold standalone bilateral meetings with Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, and US President Joe Biden. The agenda of the meetings would be to counter China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific region. Beijing's military presence and political influence in the Indo-Pacific region pose a major threat to India, Japan, and Australia. Prime Minister Modi's meeting with Quad leaders is being seen as a move towards tackling China's aggressiveness and a commitment to a free and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. The Quad group is an informal strategic dialogue with 4 members, India, Japan, Australia and the US being part of it. This is where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will hold bilateral meeting with President Biden, followed by the big Quad meeting, the first in-person meeting of Quad leadership that will take place at the White House. Primarily, the focus is going to be how to ensure that China and Chinese aggression is contained in the entire Indo-Pacific region. There are many areas that will be covered when it comes to alliances, but also the focus will remain counter-terrorism, post-COVID recovery, is also supply chain resilience. These are very important aspects, but terrorism and the situation in Afghanistan certainly are going to be key. President Biden has been criticized for having withdrawn troops very hastily from Afghanistan, and the focus now shifting to another theater, that's the Indo-Pacific. But the fact of the matter is that for India, for Australia, for Japan, for many other countries, security situation in Afghanistan is a huge concern. There is the white flag that flutters in every building, atop every building in Afghanistan, but there are certain people over here who still are keeping the tricolor of Afghanistan flying high. That's the Afghan flag. This is a tenement that was that first started as a protest site to protest nuclear war or nuclear arms race. That was in 1978, and it became a permanent structure in 1981. Is that a message that you still want, and people over here still want, an inclusive Afghanistan?
I don't want that with you being next door to Pakistan and Afghanistan only being one more nation away. I don't want that to influence a nation of 1.4 billion people on this planet.
Well, that's a citizen of America, a concerned citizen, saying that India, being next door neighbor, should not be influenced by what Pakistan is doing. Speaking of Pakistan, will certainly come up when Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets the leaders of Quad, as also President Biden. Video journalist Yogendra Singh in Washington, D.C., right outside White House. Geeta Mohan for India Today. Now, my colleague Akshita Nandagopal will take you through all the key objectives and agenda of the Quad meet. Take a look.
So this is the first in-person Quad summit that's going to be held, and there are a number of issues that will turn up in the discussions. Considering the timing of this Quad summit meet, it's happening amid a pandemic. The number one priority will be a discussion on the COVID-19 response, on vaccines collaboration as well, and ensuring all the countries work together in defeating COVID. Resilient and reliable vaccine supply chains will also be brought up in the discussions between the world leaders. Connectivity and infrastructure between India, Japan, Australia and the United States. Emerging technologies is also on the agenda in this Quad summit meet. Now, beyond that, climate change, addressing climate change, so climate action, as well as cooperation at the front of education and how times have changed amid a pandemic, that too will be discussed in great detail in this first in-person Quad summit meet. And I'm handing it back across to Geeta Mohan.
Thank you, Akshita. Now, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, also accompanying Prime Minister Modi, is in Washington, D.C. And my colleague Anjana Omkashif tried to catch up with him, but he had no comments to make on the issue of India-US ties or what is on the agenda for Prime Minister Modi's entire trip here in the States of America. Take a look. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's jam-packed schedule in the United States of America comes in the shadow of the rise of the Taliban, an issue that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to take up with the world leaders as and when he meets. This is going to be a dominant issue when Prime Minister Narendra Modi discusses issues with the United States of America. PM Modi was the only leader to call out the Taliban government and warn the world of its threat.
The unforgettable American pullout. The blood-drenched aftermath. And the rise of Afghanistan's godfathers of terror. And while the rest of the world tiptoed around the new rulers of a collapsed country, only one leader found it fit to point out a finger directly at the Taliban.
अफगानिस्तान में सत्ता परिवर्तन इंक्लूसिव नहीं है और बिना नेगोशिएशंस के हुआ है। इससे नई व्यवस्था की स्वीकार्यता पर सवाल उठते हैं।
It is in the echo of those words that the Indian Prime Minister begins his crucial United States visit that kicks off with the first in-person Quad summit. It is in the shadow of the Taliban's rise and its overwhelming implications for regional security that Modi now confabulates with the superpower that dropped Afghanistan like a hot potato and breaks bread with President Joe Biden for the first time. Modi and Biden have met virtually on at least 3 occasions: the Quad Virtual Summit in March, the Climate Change Summit in April, and the G7 Summit in June this year. But the Taliban's lightning power grab in Afghanistan has set the overwhelming tone for Modi's visit. The US pullout, a move that has jeopardized India's strategic interests in Afghanistan, will get top billing in discussions. Though the Indian security establishment is clear that America has tried to wash its hands, China's shadow in Afghanistan ensures the United States cannot ever walk away completely. As the United States itself now breaks bread with the very Taliban it once hunted, navigating the dynamics of regional security will be Modi's biggest challenge. From Washington, Modi will travel to New York to address the general debate of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly on September 25th in New York. Here too, India's focus will remain the situation in Afghanistan and terrorism emanating from Pakistan. Multiple intelligence alerts have told India that the Al-Qaeda, ISIS Khorasan and other groups could be diverted to escalate violence in Kashmir. On this issue too, the Prime Minister has cleared decks on India's stand at the SCO summit.
अफगानिस्तान में हाल के घटनाक्रम का सबसे अधिक प्रभाव हम जैसे पड़ोसी देशों पर होगा। हमें मिलकर सुनिश्चित करना चाहिए कि अफगानिस्तान की धरती का उपयोग किसी भी देश में आतंकवाद फैलाने के लिए न हो।
While Pakistan, the emboldened new stakeholder in Afghanistan, is likely to attempt to derail all conversations at the UN again by raising Kashmir at the UN, India will remain focused on the issue of terrorism, regional security and Afghanistan. While the Quad nations will also center around the Afghanistan issue and the Chinese threat, all eyes will be on how Modi and Biden decide to work together as allies in a world that just became much more dangerous. With Geeta Mohan in Washington, D.C., Bureau Report, India Today.